ठीक है स्टार्ट कर ले तो लेक्चर अवेलेबल होगा. uh, so Hiba, we were at acids and bases, right? And I explained to you what's acids and bases. That I told you that an acid is a substance that produces a proton. It's a proton donor. Okay, that's the definition when you're going to write the definition for an acid. So it's some molecule that produces a lot of H plus 1 ions. And a base is a substance that does exactly the opposite. It is a proton acceptor, which is H plus 1 ions. So it's a molecule that it's going to accept a lot of H plus 1 ions. ठीक है? आवाज आ रही है ना?
Yes, sir.
So and then I explained to you why this was important. I told you that water is one of the most important chemicals on this planet. Every chemistry, all the chemistry that's happening on planet Earth is because of water, because water is the medium in which all the reactions happen. ठीक है, वो सारा explain किया था कि plants, how do plants absorb chemicals from the soil, elements from the soil, essential minerals from the soil. They absorb water, and the water carries those minerals into its leaves. हमारी body के अंदर, how do chemicals move around? How do white blood cells, red blood cells, etc. How does glucose move from go to reach our cells? How does oxygen and carbon dioxide reach? Because they're all floating around in blood, and blood is basically water. So 70% of, so all these particles, all these substances, all the chemistry, all the reactions that are happening are actually happening in water. ठीक है, तो अगर एक दो molecules आपके, for example, there's this molecule and there's this molecule. The reason they're able to collide with each other is because they're floating around in water. And I told you that water ionizes, which means कि water आपस में collisions करके, ठीक है, due to random collisions, it might break down into H plus 1 and OH ions. But if water were to break into H plus 1 and OH ions, it will produce equal amounts of H plus 1 and equal amounts of OH ions, and that's a neutral pH. That's known as neutral, that's known as pH being equal to 7. Okay? That is what pH 7 means. Okay? That is, so whenever you hear the term pH 7, that means the solution is neutral. It's always with reference to the solution. It's always referenced with water. And we're mainly talking about aqueous solutions most of the time. Okay? But when you add an acid, what does an acid do? It starts producing its own H plus 1 ions. So this is what the acid is doing. So it's going to produce a lot of H plus 1 ions, and the quantity of H plus 1 ions in your solution is going to increase. So your solution will have a lot more H plus 1 ions in it floating around, and a lot fewer OH ions, and that's known as pH being less than 7. That's what acidic means. Or basic, if the solution becomes basic, that means what that means is that there's a molecule, some molecule X, and that's absorbing all the H plus 1 ions. So the quantity of H plus 1 ions in water will decrease, and you'll have fewer H plus 1 ions and more OH ions, and that's known as a basic solution. That's known as pH being greater than 7. जितना ज़्यादा difference होगा, the greater or higher the pH, right? So you've got a number line, and so now you've got a scale which is known as the pH scale. The middle part of that pH scale is neutral. So that's pH being equal to 7. Anything that's to the right, that is basic. Higher than that, the higher it is, the more strongly basic it's going to be. Anything that's lower than that, that's going to be acidic. And you've got indicators that can actually tell you what the pH is. So that I explained to you that there are different types of water, different types of solution. H plus 1 and OH ions can be equal. H plus 1 can be greater than OH ions, and H plus 1 can be lesser than OH ions, depending on whether you've added an acid or a base to it. But anyways, there are certain indicators that change color according to the pH. Ki agar H plus 1 zyada ho jayenge, so it will have a certain color. If there's more OH ions, it's going to have a different color. So some of the indicators, there's a thing called litmus paper or litmus solution. Okay, so pH 7 is like kind of the middle part. So starting with the first one. So litmus paper, or it could be I mean, could be in the form of a solution as well. So litmus paper, litmus solution that's in acidic, it's going to be, it's going to go from blue to red. And if the solution is basic, it's going to go from red to blue. So it's going to go from red to blue. I said, then you've got, so that's the first type of indicator. It's just maybe you've done this test in the lab as well. I said, then there's another one which is known as methyl orange. It's going to be useful, especially when you do titrations later on. So methyl orange is another indicator, and that's going to be under acidic conditions. It's red or reddish orange or red orange, basically. And under the other types of conditions, the basic conditions, it's yellow. Okay, that's what this one is. Then there's another one which is phenolphthalein. That's another indicator. I'll show you images of all three of them. And I'll post the images as well. So phenolphthalein is under acidic. It's usually colorless. And under basic conditions, it happens to be purple, pink or purple. So you got to memorize the color changes. So यहाँ पे ना I'll just show you the examples of उनके एक image भी show कर देता हूँ. अच्छा, so that's like methyl orange, and those are the ये बल्कि ज़्यादा सही है. ठीक है, so the solution is going to change color, and let me just add it over here in the notes. ठीक है, so that's methyl orange, acid or base. Similarly, you've got phenolphthalein. और उसका जो color change है ना, that's this one. ठीक है, pink depends on concentration. If it's got a higher concentration, then it's going to be purplish. So अगर stomach में ना, if you have digestive juices and you try to add an indicator to it, stomach is strongly acidic, so it's going to methyl orange is going to give you a red color. And अगर phenolphthalein, if you add it, it's going to turn colorless. ठीक है, ये इसके नीचे लिख देते हैं, this is methyl orange. ठीक है, is this clear?
Yes, sir.
Achha, so acids and bases, right? So we're done with the first part. Okay, we've defined what an acid and what a base is. Okay, 1 second दे दो. अच्छा, अगला कर लेते हैं. Next one. Acha, so the question is, what's an acid? What's a base? Okay, what's the formula of an acid, right? So we're going to make a list, okay, since we're doing formulas and equations. We're going to make a list of acids and we're going to make a list of bases as well. So acids are anything that's got H plus one. Remember, compounds are formed, there's a positive ion attached to a negative ion. So acids have H plus one ions. That's what we know of because they're always releasing H plus one ions. So that's one of the ions. The other one ion must be a negative ion attached to it. So every acid has this basic formula, which is that it's got an H plus one ion and there's some random negative ion, let's call that X minus one, whatever that negative ion is. Maybe it's a negative two ion, but it's got to be a negative ion because only then will H plus one will form a compound. So all acids have this formula and the H, that's why they're able to release H plus one ion. So that's like the basic structure of what an acid looks like. Okay, you clear?
Yes.
So I'm just going to start writing formulas of acids. It's basically all you have to do is you have to combine H plus one with any random negative ion. That's it. Okay, that's going to be your acid. And there are infinite possible acids. We're just going to do a few of them, but just use the method H plus one, combine it with any other thing, random negative ion. It's going to be an acid. So starting with the first one, okay, the first one is, so here's a list of acids that you have to memorize. So starting with the first one. And for every acid, you need to know which ions are in it. So you've got X plus one, Cl minus one. So combined together, they're going to be forming HCl, and that's hydrochloric acid. You got to remember the names and the formulas of all these acids and the ions that make up these acids. So that's hydrochloric acid. You've got H plus one. You combined it. We made a list of ions, just combine with them with all those polyatomic ions. If I combine it with SO4 minus 2, I do crisscross, that's going to be H2SO4. And that's my sulfuric acid. Okay, forget acids. Then you have H plus 1, combine it with NO3 minus 1. That's going to give you nitric acid. So H plus 1, combine it with NO3 minus 1. That's going to be HNO3. And that's your nitric acid. अच्छा फिर इसी तरह H plus 1, combine it with PO4 minus 3, phosphate ion. This will become H3PO4. If you do crisscross, that's your phosphoric acid. H plus 1, combine it with CO3 minus 2. Then that becomes crisscross. It's going to be H2CO3. So that's your carbonic acid. So, okay, H plus 1, combine it with sulfide, which is SO3 minus 2. Remember, I'm not doing anything new. We already did this last time we were making formulas. So यहाँ पे I wrote down all the. So I'm just combining H plus 1 with, combine it with all the ions. So I'll just combine it with a few of them, and they'll probably become some random acid. As a list of acids, H plus 1 with SO3 minus 2. That's going to be H2SO3. That's a less common acid in your exams. That's sulfurous acid. अच्छा, ये जो पहले 5 थे ना, these are the ones that they're going to usually ask. But remember, it could be any acid, and they have actually done that in exams as well. So you need to understand the concept of what an acid is or what the formula of an acid will look like. As I said, so you can combine H plus 1 with, let's see, NO2 minus 1, that's a nitrite ion. So it's going to become HNO2, that's nitrous acid. You can do H plus 1 with what? You can do H plus 1 with PO3 minus 3, right? So if you do that, it's going to be phosphorus. Remember to differentiate between phosphoric and phosphorus. I guess that's it. And there are a bunch of organic acids. And these organic acids are going to be done later on. So at the moment, we're not going to discuss organic acids. So this is what all acids will probably do. All acids they produce, according to the definition, they produce H+O ions. So if you take an acid and you stir it in water, they dissociate. Which means, so if there is water around, so let's say there's a container that's full of water. इसको थोड़ा छोटा कर ले. Achha, so let's say there's a container that's full of water and there's all these water molecules in it. ठीक है, so काफी बन गए. Achha, naturally there's going to be some water molecules will themselves actually break down and produce H+1 and OH ions. Some of the water molecules will break down, very few of them during collisions with the walls of the container. They're just randomly moving around. So some of them will produce H+1 and OH ions, but they will be produced in equal quantity. But when you add an acid to it, so for example, if I add HCl, इसको मैं pink color दे देता हूँ, ठीक है? So if I add HCl to it, so let's say HCl gets added, and let's say you add 3 molecules of HCl. The problem with HCl is that when you go to stir it with water, the HCl ion will dissociate. What that means is that the H+1 will break off and the Cl-1, the ions are going to get scattered in water. Pani will randomly move kar rahe honge, so the H will dissociate. It will separate from the Cl-1 ion. So all these H+1, and remember these are H+1 ions. So all these H+1 ions are going to dissociate. From the Cl-1 ions. And this is known as complete dissociation. So all of a sudden, your water is going to have a lot of H+1 ions. Previously, it did not have a lot of H+1 ions, but now all of a sudden, it's going to have a lot of them. ठीक है? ये clear है बात? So इधर से ना एक concept है which is strong acid. ठीक है? Like what's a strong acid? So strong acid is something that fully dissociates or ionizes. So it fully dissociates. दो ऐसे मेरे ख्याल से dissociates. So dissociate ka matlab, remember this word is going to be used very frequently. Dissociate means that when you put HCl in water and you start stirring it. Remember HCl originally is a gas. ठीक है? Originally जो hydrochloric acid होता है ना, that's sorry, not hydrochloric acid, it's known as hydrogen chloride gas. ठीक है? So you need to have some idea about what HCl is. So HCl gas is this white, अगर कोई image आ गया, ठीक है? ये बल्कि आया भी था. So और HCl gas ये होती है. हाँ, ये जो white fumes है ना, that's HCl gas. But that HCl gas, and these are very toxic fumes, ठीक है? Extremely toxic fumes. It's very hard to actually. What you do is you dissolve it in water and it becomes hydrochloric acid. So make sure you remember the difference. Like it says HCl gas and then there's hydrochloric acid. Hydrochloric acid is the one that mixes with water. You mix the gas and the HCl eventually dissociates. So if it fully dissociates, that means it's a strong acid. And if it fully dissociates, it produces more H+1 ions. So, and it produces more protons, which are what? Which are H+1 ions, right? So is this idea clear?
Yes.
So similarly, there's another acid which is a weak acid. So what a weak acid will do is, like for example, one over here, I mean, all of these are relatively strong acids. There's a carbonic acid, which tends to be actually a very weak acid. So weak acid would kind of look like this. Okay, if it's a weak acid, like carbonic acid, right? So forget HCl. HCl is a strong acid, so let's get rid of that. Now imagine you got carbonic acid, and ये पानी से ना दो एक H+ और एक OH वैसे प्रोड्यूस हुआ है, ठीक है? So imagine you've got carbonic acid, H2CO3. You mix it in water and it does not dissociate. वो H+1 ना उसके साथ ही जुड़ा रहता है, ठीक है? So that means it doesn't produce an H+1. You mix another carbonic acid, and out of that, maybe 2 H+9s are produced. So maybe one of them breaks down, right? Because you're stirring it in water. So maybe one carbonic acid dissociates. You add another carbonic acid, doesn't dissociate. You add another carbonic acid, it does not dissociate. इसका मतलब है its ionization or dissociation is very, very weak. So very few carbonic acid are actually dissociating. So the quantity of H+ ions in the solution are not going to be very high. So it's not going to be that acidic, okay? So this is known as a weak. So that's known as a weak acid. It partially ionizes or dissociates. बल्कि दोनों words use कर लेता हूँ. ठीक है, partially dissociates, ionizes, and produces fewer H+ ions. ऊपर वाले में भी ना मैं वो dissociates के साथ ionizes भी add कर रहा हूँ, ठीक है? अच्छा, so weak acids, strong acids. Weak acids will tend to have a pH that will be very close to 7. So normally, if you want to guess, you measure the pH and it comes out to be around, let's say, 4 to 7. Then it's very likely to be a weak acid. Vice versa, if it's a strong acid, its pH will probably be very close to 0, or it's going to be very low. So for a strong acid, the pH will tend to be between 0 and 3, or on the lower side. ठीक है? तो clear है बात ये? Mazeba, is this clear?
Yes.
अच्छा, अगला part है bases, ठीक है? What are bases? We're done with the formulas of acids. अच्छा, तो बस basis का करना है. तो वो एक second खोलो. अच्छा, तो अभी बस I'll just give you a basic idea of what a base is, ठीक है? Remember the formula of acids? So base, I'll just give you a basic idea of what a base is. So base is the opposite. It accepts H+ ions. So क्या charge होगा? What is the charge on this base? Like if it's attracting H+ ions, what do you think?
Positive.
If it's positive, why would it attract positive?
Before then it's negative.
So it's probably going to be negative, right? Okay, yes. So that's what a base is. So it's probably any negative ion that's kind of a base. So bases are so I'll just so pretty much any negative ion will kind of act as a base. So oxides are really good bases because they always accept H+ ions. Like if there are H+ ions around, they're going to attract those H+ ions and they're going to turn into water. So oxides, that's one. They like to accept H+ ions. Hydroxides is another one. They are also very good bases. They also tend to attract H+ ions. And when they attract H+1 ions, those H+ ions, they turn into water. And then there's a carbonate ion as well. That's kind of a weak base, not a very strong base. They also tend to attract H+1 ions, Those H plus ions tend to combine with the oxygens in carbonate and they end up forming water and carbon dioxide. Okay, so any compound that has these ions in them, they will probably be kind of basic. Carbonates, oxides, hydroxides, ठीक है? So basis के ऊपर ना फिर next time कर लेते हैं and we'll start making equations in the class as well, ठीक है? तो ये सारा clear है?
जी
ये बात clear है?
Yes, sir.
चलो ठीक है. Okay then. Take care everyone.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम
Salam.